It's good to see everyone this evening. As those who are members know, we just finished up a study in the book of James, and that was very profitable, at least it was for me, and I hope it was for you as well. And so I was contemplating on what to go to for the time that we have left together. As many of you probably already know, I won't be here too much longer, and so I'm thankful for the time that I've had here and thankful for the studies that we've had. But I want to do something beneficial with you for the rest of the time that I do have, and so we're going to go through a study of the book of Ecclesiastes. It's going to be a little bit different than what we did with the book of James, because James we were able to sort of go verse by verse. With only the short time that we have left, and Ecclesiastes being far more chapters than the book of James, not really going to be able to do that with Ecclesiastes. But we do want to cover some main points and look at some specific things. And I gave all of my outlines out and then forgot to grab my own. And so if you did get an outline, I think everybody here, I think everyone got one. And so I encourage you to sort of take a look at that. I did borrow this from another place, and so that's why there's a permanent marker at the top up there that's scratched out some different things up there. But we have a pretty good rough outline of what we're going to see in the book of Ecclesiastes. Obviously, this book focusing a lot on and you see this through the first few sections there, the vanity of different things of this life and how those things are not really worth pursuing if we don't have God. So that's going to be sort of our main focus. But we do want to allow people, and this is something that I want to improve on, allow people to speak more often during the class. And so if you have any thing that you see, I encourage you to bring that up. Now, as you'll see on the outline, there are, 5 conclusions there. We'll study the first one this evening. The second one's actually pretty short, so it'll be easy to cover next week. The third, obviously, the next week, and then the fourth and the fifth will be the last week of this month. And so we'll do a quick study of this, but it should be very beneficial, I hope, for you. Just a little bit of and one other thing I wanted to mention before we start. Because I do want a little bit more discussion, a little bit more openness in the class, I'm going to use the screen in just a few minutes, but mainly I wanted us to focus on the outline and on a very specific part that I'm going to show you in just a few minutes, a short little clip that I wanted to show you about Solomon's temple, but we'll see that in just a little while. But other than that, let's make sure that we do what we can to try and involve as many people as we can in the class. That's always a good thing. So beginning this evening, as we get into the book of Ecclesiastes, we're going to see from verse 1 that it was written by the son of David, Solomon, King Solomon. It says, the words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Now, perhaps you've studied about Solomon before. Perhaps you have seen some different things in the Bible about Solomon before. What are some of the things that come to your mind when you think about Solomon? What are some of the things that you would use to maybe describe him? There's a couple of different ones that I have in my mind that I'm thinking of, and I want to see if you sort of think of the same thing. Wisdom, yes, absolutely. So that's the first thing that we wanted to bring up, is that Solomon is a man of wisdom. Solomon is a man who asks God for wisdom. That is found over in 2 Chronicles chapter 1, verses 7 through 12. We can see where he asks God for that wisdom. Now, for sake of time, we won't go over there and read that, but if you want to write that down, that is found over in 2 Chronicles 1, 7 through 12. And so Solomon's a very wise Very wise man. Anything else that you think of when you think of Solomon? Yes, Solomon is a very, very rich man. He's a very wealthy man. In fact, probably at this time, one of the wealthiest, if not the wealthiest person that we would see in this time. And so we have those two things that we want to keep in mind throughout this book, is that Solomon is a very wise man. He asks God for wisdom. He's learned a lot through experiences in his life. And he is also a man that is very wealthy, very rich, has the opportunity to gain really whatever he wants in this life. We're going to sort of see that as we go through some of the passages tonight. So the purpose of the book of Ecclesiastes. We're not going to do a whole lot of introductory stuff other than looking at the author just for a second as we have, and then discussing the purpose. Then we'll go ahead and get into the text. Ecclesiastes lets the reader know that, obviously us as the reader, lets the reader know that through experience and through wisdom given by God, that Solomon realizes that the only things in this life that are worth working and living for are the things that we do for God, or the things that we do spiritually speaking. And in a way, and this was from some of the notes that I got from the Memphis School preaching as I was there, this book can be viewed as sort of a confession. Confession as in Solomon is looking at those who are reading this book and telling them, he's saying, this is what I have figured out through my years of wisdom and experience. Yes, ma'am. And so, sort of look at it that way as we go through the book, and we'll see him confess a whole lot of different things, really, especially in this first section that we're going to be looking at, this first conclusion, about how he's trying to find happiness and joy and all of these different things and just has not been successful. And so, thinking about that, thinking about the fact that he is a rich man, he is a wise man, let's go ahead and read verses 1 through 11. Now, verses 1 through 11, as you can see on your outline, is described as illustrations of the general vanity of life. And so that's sort of what we're going to be focusing on here with these first 11 verses. Let's see. Just because I've been running around a little bit, does anybody want to try and read a few of these verses? Let's say 1 through 6, and then somebody else 7 through, or let's say 1 through 5, and somebody else 7 or 6 through 11. Okay, thank you, sir.
Words of the preacher, the son of David, king and Jerusalem. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What profit has a man from all his labor which he toils under the sun? One generation passes away, and another generation comes, but the earth abides forever. The sun also rises, and the sun goes down, and hastens to the place where it arose.
All right, somebody else 6 through 11 for me.
The wind goes toward the south and turns around to the north. The wind whirls about continually and comes again on its circuit. All the rivers run into the sea, yet the sea is not full. To the place from which the rivers come, there they return again. All things are full of labor. Man cannot express it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. That which has been is what will be. That which is done is what will be done, and there is nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which it may be said, see, this is new? It has already been in ancient times before us. There is no remembrance of former things, nor will there be any remembrance of things that are to come by those who will come after.
Okay. Now, like I said, I want this to be a little bit more discussion. So, does anybody see any details in there that they want to discuss? Anything that they see interesting about what Solomon's saying? Anything you want to bring up before I begin going through any notes?
Nothing you were.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we use that phrase a lot, especially in the church, and that being found down there towards the end there. That was what verse was that? Yeah, verse 9. Okay, so we have a couple of different things here. So there's nothing new under the sun. And you mentioned these certainties of nature. And there's actually, speaking of that, the nature part of that, there's actually some scientific foreknowledge here that we're really paying attention, especially over in verses 6 and 7. Reading through that again, we'll go back to the beginning and look through all of this, but just because that was brought up, I thought this was sort of interesting. The wind goeth toward the south and turneth about unto the north. It whirleth about continually, and the wind returneth again according to his circuits. All the river run into the sea, yet the sea is not full unto the place from whence the rivers come, thither they return again. So we're talking about here scientific foreknowledge and the foreknowledge of God. Anybody know exactly what all that is referring to? I thought it very interesting. So looking at verse 6 and 7, what we're really referring to here is we have some references to different jet streams and also the water cycle, especially in verse 7. And so, he says there, talking about how all things are going to return from, where they came from and different things of that nature. I thought it very interesting to see that scientific foreknowledge in Ecclesiastes 1 verses 6 and 7, knowing that definitely is a sign that this is the words of God that Solomon is penning here, and he has learned these things, and he was inspired by God to write these things. Now that is, let's see. Let me look at this and see if I can give you a good answer for that. That's, you said verse 6 there. I should have wrote it. There it is. Okay. Sorry, I gotta pull my program up. I want to see for myself just to make sure that I give you the right meaning here. So circuits meaning a circle. So it would be about it says about circuits compass on every side. So that would be, I think that what we're referring to here, as we talk about as he talks about with the water cycle, it's sort of being a continual cycle, sort of talking about the same thing there with that circuit that he's mentioning with the wind, having that same idea. Let's go back up to verses 1 and 2 for a moment. This is one of those sayings that we normally a lot of times hear in the Bible as well. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What is, when he's speaking of vanity, what is he talking about? Vanity. What does that mean? What is something done in vain or vanity that he's talking about here? Yes, it's useless. So I looked up the definition of that word vanity. Void, empty. I really like the empty part there. I think that's very good. Pointless, worthless, and null. All very negative things. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. Throughout this section, as we've seen, as we've read through this, there are many physical accomplishments, and that goes on throughout this chapter and the next chapter and throughout really the whole book. There are a lot of physical accomplishments that Solomon talks about that he has been able to do and obtain. But in his eyes, remember we said that Solomon was a very wise man, that he asked for wisdom by God. And even though he was able to do all these amazing things, and really when we think about the life that we live today, if we had someone who was able to accomplish the things that he did, most of the world would consider them a very, very big success. But in his eyes, none of this really amounts to anything. None of it was worth the sacrifice, is what we're going to see. He mentions in verse 3 that all the labor that he has done, all the things that men do to labor, he says, what profit hath a man of all his labor which he takes under the sun? Now he's talking about here ultimate profit. Now, I mean, obviously we understand and know that we want to be those who are willing to work for what we have. We want to be those who are willing to take care of ourselves and our families. But keep in mind what we're talking about throughout this whole book, ultimate profit. It may profit us a little on this earth, but he's saying what ultimate profit is there for men laboring as they do for all these physical things. Once again, kind of thinking about, and it's great how you can go back into the Old Testament, and we know that the things that were written aforetime were written for our learning. We can see similar situations to exactly what we see today, and so it's important for us to realize and see those things. He says in verse 4, a generation passes away and another generation comes, but the earth abideth forever. So once again, Miss Marie just referred to the continual cycle of nature just a moment ago, how it continues to go and go, and everything returns as it was. And he mentions generations coming, generations going, and sort of thinking about that with us. Think about how many generations there have been. Even in your own family. My dad was able to go on to one of those family history website things, and I think he got back to like the 1600s, maybe even the 1500s with our family. And Solomon's point here is, and sort of applying it to the situation with my dad looking up all that. It's great to be able to know that, but those generations come and they go. More generations come. All the things that those people have accomplished, they were all great and wonderful, but, all of those things have, been surpassed now, and they've been, other people are remembered, and it'll continue to happen in that way, and it just continues to go in cycles. And so he's saying, what is the meaning of all this? What are we trying to accomplish in this life? Because all that's really happening, and I see it every day, as Solomon says, is that one generation comes, another generation goes, and that's where we find ourselves. And so he's trying to find this meaning here.
The opposite of that, Paul talks about 1 Peter 50:58. Be steadfast and immovable, always doing the work of the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Your labor of the Lord is not in vain. So it's right opposite.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So he's talking about vanity here. Labor of the Lord is not in vain. And we talked about how there is no ultimate profit in this sort of labor, but that labor for the Lord, absolutely, there is a wonderful profit when this life is over. And so that's a great point. He says in verse 5, we just read just a moment ago, the sun rises and goes down and hastens to the place where he arose. Once again, talking about these things that we see happening in nature. Time continues to go on. Things continue to go as they're supposed to go. The sun continues to rise and to set. People continue to be born and to die. What is the point of everything that is happening? So just keep that sort of in mind as we go through this whole section. Really, here is that is exactly what he is trying to come to a conclusion of. Is what are we trying to work for? What is worth the sacrifice that we make with our lives and doing the things that we do. We mentioned verses 6 and 7 just a moment ago, so we won't go back and look at that. Verses 8 and 9. All things are full of labor. Man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. The things that have been, it is that which shall be, and that which is done is that which shall be done, and there is no new thing under the sun. We mentioned that just a moment ago as well. So we're talking about here the vanity of life. We think about the labors and toils of man, and even us today physically. We've had jobs. We do have jobs. We labor and we toil. But what is the point if we don't have God that we're ultimately working for? And really, there is no point, and that's going to be his ultimate conclusion. Referring down to verse 10, especially that phrase, looking at that no new thing under the sun. He says, is there anything whereof it may be said, see, this is new, it hath been already of old time, which was before us. Now, we all sort of have seen some pretty cool technological advances as we've gone through our lives. Even myself, I wasn't born but 27 years ago, but even in my lifetime, there's been some really, really neat and cool things that have happened with technology. But when we really boil it down and we look at the things that happen in this life, we just build off of what has been built off of before us. The things that we're able to do, they change to a certain degree. We're able to make things more efficient, make things maybe a little bit easier at times. But when we boil it down, these things mostly remain the same. We're always trying to accomplish the same things. We're just trying to find a little bit of a better way to do it. We're building off of technology that came before. Most of the advanced versions of the things that we see are just that. They're just more advanced versions of things that have come along from a long time ago. And you even think about something like a smartphone or something like that. We think about what we're trying to do with a smartphone is make communication easier. We send texts, we call, but before that there was, there still is mail, but telegraph and things of that nature. And so we just sort of build off of what has always been something that men had to do, but it was just to sort of making it more efficient. And so thinking of it in that way, there's nothing new under the sun. Everybody keeps on working to accomplish these things, and he's sort of just saying here, well, all we're doing is just building off of what's already been done. Nothing is new. We're not accomplishing anything that's great and wonderful and that's going to last, in some way greater than what this life is. And so sort of seeing that example there. He says, there is no remembrance of former things, neither shall there be any remembrance of things that are to come was those that shall come after. So one day the things that we have today, that we count so much on, that we look at as important, are going to be gone. And I've heard preachers before, and I think this is important for us to sort of realize ourselves, is to think about even our own lives. One day when we're past and gone, we'll have a date on that tombstone, and we'll have the beginning date and the end date. That little dash right in the middle there, represents everything that we've done in our lives. And so, what is it that we're doing that is going to outlast this physical life? Is it because what we're seeing from Solomon here is he's saying all of these things that I've mentioned so far, none of this is worth really anything in the grand scheme of things. None of this is going to be able to outlast this physical life. And he's saying, that it's not really worth it. And I've also heard preachers say this, 100 years from now, we like to think, people are going to remember us. That people are going to, even our family, people are going to remember, as we pass away from this life, they're going to come back and they're going to take care of our graves, and they're going to take care of the cemetery where we're buried, and they're going to, 100 years from now, it's very likely for most of us that anybody that would have known us is not going to be alive to be able to remember us, and even family at that point is going to be moved on. And so, it's sort of, when you think about it in that nature, really one of those things that just kind of makes you think, we strive so much for all these physical things. But what are we actually accomplishing when we accomplish any of them? Because they're not going to last. And so that's sort of what we're getting at here. Any comments or questions or anything about this first section before we move on to the second section of chapter 1?
I think that all of the chapter, maybe the Ecclesiastes itself, it's really easy for us to think things today are important.
Right.
Or think our life is long. And really, if we could concentrate on what's going on today, I think that's a big deal, but really it's eternity.
Yeah.
That's the important thing.
Yeah.
It's easy to get lost and carried away.
Oh yeah, very easy. And the more busy we get, the easier it is to find ourselves in those types of places. Get caught up in the hustle and bustle. But the things that we're doing for eternity is exactly right. The things that we should be focusing on. Anybody else?
I also think that there is nothing new under the sun. You can apply that to your own personal life as well and say, I'm not going through anything that
Someone else has not already gone through? Yeah, you can, absolutely. Miss Marie, do you have something? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, yeah. We may find ourselves partially satisfied just for a few moments until we just work for more. Did you have something too? I thought I heard you say something. Okay. All right. So we have these illustrations, as we said, illustrations of the general vanity of life. This first section. Let's look at verses 12 through 18. We're going to see the vanity of striving after wisdom. Ecclesiastes 1:12 through verse 18. I, the preacher, was king over Israel in Jerusalem. Now, as we read through this, remember what we said about Solomon just a few minutes ago, his wisdom given to him even by God, and then the fact that he was such a rich and powerful man. He says, I, the preacher, was king of Israel in Jerusalem, and I gave my heart to seek and search out by wisdom concerning all things that are done under heaven. This sore travail hath God given to the sons of man to be exercised therewith. I have seen all the works that are done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and vexation of spirit. All is vanity and vexation of spirit. He says, that which is crooked cannot be made straight, and that which is wanting cannot be numbered. I communed with my own heart, saying, Lo, I am come to great estate, and have gotten more wisdom than all they that have been before me in Jerusalem. Yea, my heart had great experience of wisdom and knowledge. And I gave my heart to know wisdom, and to know madness and folly. I perceived that this also is vexation of spirit. For in much wisdom is much grief, and he that increaseth knowledge increaseth sorrow. And once again, anything anybody sees that sort of stands out to them in this section? Anything anybody wants to bring up?
Knowledge increases sorrow. Maybe nobody knows sometimes works off the yard.
Yeah.
Shelter and no less sometimes.
Yeah.
The more you know what's wrong in this world we live in, the sin and sorrow, the more you wish you didn't know.
And that sort of reminds me, just sort of thought about this. It sort of reminds me of Adam and Eve back when, we talk about them in the Garden of Eden. God told them for a reason not to eat of the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, trying to protect them, trying to sort of, give them an opportunity to be able to live in that garden and not have to deal with those types of things. And I think there's some certain truth when we think about the saying that we've often used from time to time, ignorance is bliss to a certain degree. That's something that there's a good reason that we do use that phrase.
We always say we'd like to know what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Now I've heard people say exactly what you said. I'd love to live, 150 years and see just what. I don't know that would be very beneficial for us. That might be something that would be detrimental more than beneficial, especially. Something that I noticed and I thought was something that was very interesting about this section is the fact that in verses 14 and let's see. Trying to find the other verse that I wanted to say. We'll start off in verse 14 now. See if I can find the other one. He says, I have seen all the works that are done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and vexation of spirit. I thought it was interesting, just the fact that he says, all of this, everything that I've been able to see, he says, I have seen all works that are done under the sun, everything. And behold, all is vanity and vexation of spirit. There's nothing left that he could find that would hold the type of value that he was looking for. So he was looking for something. What is the meaning of everything that we're doing here? I've tried all. I've tried everything. I've seen all these works that are done under the sun. All is vanity and vexation of spirit. I thought that was very, very interesting. Him speaking of all of those different things. And then there was one more here, if I can find it. Yeah, verse 16. Here we go. I communed with mine own heart, saying, Lo, I am come to great estate, and have gotten more wisdom than all they that have been before me in Jerusalem. Yea, my heart had great experience of wisdom and knowledge, and I gave my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. I perceive this also is vexation of spirit. So we talked about just a few moments ago how he was such a wise man. He says that he had more wisdom than all they that had been before him in Jerusalem. And so not only did he try all these physical things to find his meaning and happiness and joyfulness, but he also, and we sort of think about at this time and on through history, all of the scholars and all of the people who considered themselves to be, very, very smart individuals and studying science and mathematics and all of these different things. He was a very wise man, but not even in worldly wisdom can he find that sort of joy and happiness and sense of fulfillment that he is looking for.
I think he fails to give God credit for what he has.
Yeah, I think so too.
He got the clean to start with,
Mm-hmm.
and he's taking credit for it all now. He left God out.
Yeah. That's sort of that we can sort of see that from the way that he's talking here. As you said, leaving God out of it, him using this I multiple times throughout this whole section, failing to give God saying that God was the one who was able to give him those things.
He had wisdom, but it wasn't proved.
Yeah, and I put that in some of my notes here somewhere. I can.
Big difference in wisdom and proving.
Yeah, absolutely. He was throughout that whole section. We can sort of see that. And so, as we said before, he's tried everything. He's tried all of these different things. Has left God out of not giving credit to God where it was due. Wasn't able to find exactly what he was looking for. He says in verse 17 there, and I gave my heart to know wisdom and know madness and folly. I perceive that this is also vexation of spirit. The search for wisdom and knowledge was vexation of spirit, and I thought this word vexation was a pretty interesting word, and so I wanted to mention this to you before we moved on to our next section here. Vexation. The state of being annoyed, frustrated, or worried. And so thinking about exactly what he's trying to do here, he keeps searching, keeps looking, keeps trying to find this, and is becoming so annoyed and frustrated and worried because he just cannot seem to find what he is looking for with this sort of attitude that he's got and looking for what the meaning of all of this is. It's a very strong word, that word vexation of spirit. Anybody else have any questions or comments or anything they want to bring up about this section? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think there's something to be said of that too, because we can even sort of see that today when we think about some of the most disappointed and sad and troubled individuals in this life are the people who have the most physical things that we see in this life. You think about some of those who have been famous in the past who end up taking their own lives. You think about those who seem like they have it all, and who seem like they would be some of the happiest people and just joyful people in the world, according to what the world thinks is that source of joy. And we have people who are, in that position, who are, having drug problems and alcohol problems and marital problems and just all kind of things. And so it's like Miss Marie said, he keeps searching for all these things, and all of it, every bit of it, just continues to bring him deeper and deeper into sorrow, and him realizing, I've not found it. This is still not what I'm, searching for here. And so, we can even sort of see that in the world that we live in today. Anybody else?
What does verse 15 kind of say where you got to get?
Verse 15. That which is crooked cannot be made straight, and that which is worn can. Yeah, I would say so. Yeah. That would be. So he's talking about there, for sure. Let's go to. Let's look at verses 1 through 3 of chapter 2. This being our next little section here. The vanity of striving after pleasure is named on the outline. We've already seen some of this. Obviously, these sort of don't run together, but they sort of feed off of each other for sure. And so, looking at verses 1 through 3 here, he says, starting in verse 1, I said in mine heart, go to now, I will prove thee with mirth. Therefore enjoy pleasure, and behold, this also is vanity. I said of laughter, is it mad, and of mirth, what doeth it? I saw in mine heart to give myself unto wine, yet acquainting my heart with wisdom, and to lay hold on folly, till I might see what was that good for the sons of men, which they should do under the heaven all the days of their life. What we notice, anybody want to bring up anything on this section here?
I think it's usually a good place for art.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. He says through this here, and even the title of this section sort of speaks to that misplaced priorities, the vanity of striving after pleasure. So he continues to look for that joyfulness, that happiness, whatever you want to call it, through this section here, and he just cannot find it. He says he tried to go and to do all of these things that cause others, joy, worldly pleasure, cannot obtain it. He said, I thought verse 2 was very interesting. I said of laughter, is it mad, and of mirth, what doeth it? So mirth meaning sort of amusement, something to entertain. We like to laugh. We like to be entertained in this life. We like to, have fun in certain ways, but these things are temporary. And so they can sort of give him that happiness and joyfulness that he was maybe searching for just for a moment, but when they were done, he was right back to where he started. Even of that laughter and of those things which bring amusement to others, still wasn't able to find what he was looking for. And then verse number 3, to me it sort of seems like here he's trying to find almost a balance between wisdom and foolishness in a way. He begins to seek sort of a surefire system for himself to have this self-fulfillment in following the verses that we will continue to read through. So we've sort of seen. I guess we'll go ahead and stop there because we've got to get into our devotional this evening. So I said I was going to bring it up on the screen, but I'll save that for next week. So yeah, go ahead. Do what? Yeah, exactly. He kept searching, but he kept searching in all the wrong places. Yeah. And so what we're going to do next week, and this works out pretty good, especially because we'll have a little bit more time next week. We won't have as many verses to cover, and especially the next week as well. We will only have just a few verses to cover, and so that week we sort of will be able to go through it more verse by verse. I may even get into the next section there. But we've seen these first few sections here, illustrations of the general vanity of life, the vanity of striving after wisdom, that is worldly wisdom, searching for that fulfillment in that, not being able to find it, striving after pleasures, trying to look at that and find those things which bring joy to the world, still not able to find it. Next week we're going to look at the vanity of great accomplishments. Now Solomon was, as we said, he was a great man. He was a powerful man. He was able to do a lot of big things as far as the world is concerned in some ways. But even those, he says, after he accomplished all these great things, he still wasn't able to find exactly what he was looking for. And then finally, the vanity of hard labor at the end of chapter 2, and then his first conclusion there that we'll look at next week. And then we'll also try and get a little bit into that second section there as well. Any other comments, questions, things anybody wants to bring up before we close with our class and get into our devotional period?